Are you challenging me?
Welcome to Strength for Tomorrow Radio on this fine October day. It's the end of another week. It's been a historic week, and I don't just mean because Liverpool tanked Man United 5-0 at Old Trafford at the start of it, just to goad some United fans at the start. I mean this week will never ever be repeated again. If you think about it, the 29th of October 2021 will never repeat. This is it. It's never going to happen again. So we better make the most of it. Enjoy it and live it like it's never going to happen again, because it won't. So that's my inspirational, motivational thought for the day. That's it over. Last week we talked about snack accidents and we discussed all the ins and outs of snacking, how to do it well, how to overcome stress snacking and things like that. This week we're going to turn our attention to running. So everybody's out running these days, right? I don't know what it is about the darker evenings, but everybody seems to love running these days, which is cool. But we're going to have some practical tips. We're going to share some things maybe you haven't heard before. Not necessarily from a technique point of view, because it's kind of hard to do without the visual, but from a training perspective, some do's and don'ts, the road of flexibility and the road of strength, and where the focus should be. We're going to discuss some studies, and we're going to give you some anecdotal evidence as well. So if you like running, if you're a competitive runner, or if you're trying to get really fast, or if you've got constant niggles, or you're trying to run pain-free, this is the show you've been waiting for, so do stick around. So I have trained many runners, cyclists, some swimmers over the last 5 years, endurance athletes if you want to call them that, to greater or lesser degrees. And a lot of them have originally come to me with some sort of niggly pain or persistent minor injury. Maybe injury is too strong a word, but they're aware of something, be it tendinitis, strain, pull, whatever. I'm not a physio, and I don't intend to be, but something which is becoming more and more important is the ability to self-treat yourself. And I know that sounds like a controversial thing to say in 2021, but I don't mean injuries. And by injury I mean something which will prevent you from doing your job, or walking normally, or carrying out your day-to-day daily activities. That's an injury. Whenever you're impeded from doing that, everything below that, you should probably be able to figure out what's going on in your own body, what's causing it, and what needs to be done to help it recover and then prevent it from happening again. Now, I've referenced Dr. Kelly Starrett before. He's the author of Supple Leopard, Deathbound, Ready to Run, and he's the owner of The Ready State, which is a company you should look into. They've got some really good videos, advice, products as well, if you're into that. But over the years I've learned so much from it and from him. But that's what he's advocating for. So, instead of pumping ourselves full of painkillers, injections, glucosamine, fish oils, all that sort of stuff, his aim is to kind of equip the individual with all of the tools to self-diagnose all those little issues that are causing the problem, and then following the right path to help it recover, and then stop it from happening ever again. So that's what he's all about, and that's what his company is all about. So do check them out on YouTube, Instagram, etc. It's called The Ready State. So for runners, cyclists and swimmers who typically run, excuse the pun, into overuse issues, this is something that you might want to think about, and it's something that you probably want to do, is to get to know your own body, to get to know what's causing that little bit of hip twinge, what's causing your shins to feel like that, what's causing your foot to do that, before you have to go to a physio or get a painkiller injection or something in it, because those are things that you really want to avoid, I would say, if you can. And I know in the 21st century, we like to just give ourselves a quick fix, give us a pill, give us a jab, give us whatever, and get on with our lives. But quite oftentimes it's the simple things that are going to benefit us most in the long run. It's doing the basics. It's eating well. It's eating your vegetables, eating your fruits, eating your protein, getting plenty of sleep, de-stressing, reducing your screen time. It's doing all these things, moving, all those basic things every single day, instead of just patching over it with a quick fix. So that all being said, quite often, I get a runner who will come to me and they'll say, I've got really tight hamstrings. I don't know if they think that's what they have themselves. Maybe they've been told that by an old running coach, maybe they've been told that by a physio, maybe they've been told that by their high school coach or teacher, whoever. And then they'll proceed to stretch their hamstrings like crazy, like a crazy person, like getting into some sort of contorted position. And on that note, by the way, it's 2021, and if you're still doing static stretching before you go for a run, or you cycle, or you swim, or you're doing a weightlifting session, you really need to stop it. Unless, of course, you want to waste your time, reduce your power output for several hours afterwards. That'll mean your session is going to suck. But I don't know why you would do, but there you go. So, yeah, many runners will attempt to increase their flexibility. That's their first, I think, right, need to stretch. And they'll attempt to increase their flexibility in an effort to get faster, prevent injury, and, improve their running economy, essentially. And intuitively, this should make sense, right? But unfortunately, the studies actually suggest the opposite. So, before you go and sign up for the latest yoga class, and I'm not trying to do anyone out of business if you own a yoga company, keep listening to this podcast because we've got some interesting little studies to share.
It's time to stop!
So static stretching, I guess we've all kind of gone through all these things at high school and PE or games or whatever it was you did. But static stretching has, been known for some time that it reduces your power and strength for up to 1 hour afterwards. And this has mainly been demonstrated among weightlifters, but more recently it's also been demonstrated among endurance athletes as well. So if you're holding the old classic quad stretch, you grab your ankle or your foot and pull up behind you, stretch the quad, and you're holding it for 45 seconds or a minute before you go for a run, you're likely impairing your running performance. So if you're training, you're wondering why you're getting slower or you're not getting any faster, that's probably not helping. Okay, so it basically drains your batteries, it drains your power, it drains that what you have stored in your muscle fibers. And this has been demonstrated in a study like Wilson et al. In 2010. You can look that one up if you want to see what I'm talking about. The other thing is, if you increase your flexibility, this is the ironic thing. So Usain Bolt, he's probably as tight as a drum because he's the fastest man in the world. At least he used to be. I don't know. He probably still beat me in a race. Pretty sure he would. Blindfolded, one arm behind his back and all that. But if you're tempted to kind of turn to yoga or some sort of a stretch, just do more stretching. In a quest to improve your running performance. Maybe you're quite a quick runner, you're a decent runner, and you think, oh, I've got this injury, I've got this niggle. That's quite often why runners turn to stretching, is because they get a niggle or a knock, or they have a wee issue going on. I think I need to stretch this, I need to stretch that, I need to do more time stretching. And it's, I guess in the last 10 or 20 years, it's been something that's been really plugged. I guess, well, maybe 10 or 5 years, it's been really plugged. We need to be more flexible, need more mobility. Now we'll get the mobility, but we'll discuss flexibility first of all. So there's lots and lots of studies that show a correlation between increased hamstring flexibility in the old sit and reach test. So it's basically sit down like an L-sit position, reach forward and see how close you can reach forward, basically how far you can get. And they found that as you increase your hamstring flexibility, so you do everything to do that, to get that effect on your hamstrings, it will reduce your running economy, which is crazy. It sounds crazy. So there's a study here, T.L. Traherne and R.J. Baresh in 2009. So that's like 12 years ago, 13 years ago. So that's another one you can look into if you want to see if I'm talking through my hat or not. And the question is, why does this happen? Basically, your muscles and your tendons have the ability to store energy. So whenever the tension and stiffness is reduced, it limits your ability to store and release that energy. So every time you take do a stretch, your foot won't explode off the ground to propel you forward as it should. If you going up the chain, you got your calves, you got your celeste, you got your gastrocnemius, you've got these muscles in your calf, and then you're going up, you got your hamstrings, you got your quads, all the little parts in there, and right through your hips. So this basically means that your running performance will suffer as you'll tire quicker. Okay, so I'm gonna say it again. So every time you take your do a stretch, your foot won't explode off the ground to propel you forward as it should. So that tension and stiffness is reduced because you're getting more flexibility. This is going to limit your ability to store and release the energy. Sounds crazy, right? So it's an interesting one, but it's been verified pretty well. It's pretty concrete at this stage, more so than a lot of things that are about in 2021. But yeah, so what's the alternative? Am I saying like you shouldn't stretch? Am I saying that avoid stretching, go about being all stiff and tight? Absolutely not saying that. There's lots of things that need to be stretched, and there's lots of things that don't need to be stretched as much. Um, Sometimes what we do is we focus on the wrong area. So runners think, like, look at the big muscle, the hamstring down the back of the leg, and think, I need that guy stretched, that guy's tight and stiff. And he probably will be. If you've been doing a lot of running, they probably are going to get tight, but it's going to make you a faster runner. And I'm not talking just about like a sprint. I'm not talking about a 100 meter, 200 meter sprint. I'm talking about 5Ks, 10Ks, etc. and above. There's various ways to stretch, and each type offers unique benefits depending on, whenever it is performing. So one type of stretching that you might want to consider is, before you go for your run, is dynamic stretching. So dynamic stretching is whenever you start moving before you do your work. So if you think things like body weight squats, lunges, hinges, moving calf stretches, anything that's going to work the muscles, but you're going to keep moving. So the goal is to increase range of motion in your joints, but without killing, if you want to think of it that way, killing your muscles, beating them up before you've started. So you don't want to do that prematurely. You're going to get beat up in the workout, right? Whether it's running, swimming, cycling, weightlifting, whatever. So these will enable you to run faster and more efficiently while also keeping your joints mobile. It's really the joints you want to think about mobilizing, rather than making your muscles more flexible. They also help prime your muscles for the more intense work that you're about to undertake. If you're killing yourself and beating yourself up in the warm-up, that's a problem. And I see it all the time in the gym. People try to go too hard on the warm-up sets, especially for novices. And another aid to that would be strength and power training to complement your running. And we're going to get more into that. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But chronically tight muscles, not always, but quite often, they tend to be weak muscles. So if you think, oh, my hamstrings are really tight, you probably got weak hamstrings. They're probably not as strong as they should be. How strong as they should be? Well, strong enough to support your frame, strong enough to support your activity, without you suffering too much, or without you being in pain for days afterwards, or just, as you say, I'm feeling that tightness in them. So if you're always stretching your hamstrings, you might want to try to increase your strength through strength training, funnily enough, and a smart training program rather than a mindless, endless stretching routine every day or every other day. That's going to benefit you much, much more. Your running will benefit from, stronger, more powerful, more explosive, and more robust muscles. And we're going to get to some of the common objections as to why runners avoid strength training. So there are actually a lot of studies that suggest that running is among the most injurious sports in the world. And it's kind of crazy, right? You would just expect that it would be something like, I don't know, mountain climbing or CrossFit. People would give it a bad rep. Or, I don't know, weightlifting, bungee jumping. Is bungee jumping a sport? I don't know. Any bungee jumpers out there? Feel free to complain about me discrediting your sport. But yeah, running. I guess it's so common though, isn't it? Everyone can run. Everyone's somewhere to run away from somebody, or run away from a dog, whatever. Everyone runs. And if you talk to a runner, like we said, they're probably carrying some sort of wee niggle or some sort of a little issue, that maybe an old injury that hasn't healed up properly and has always given them bother since that. But it doesn't have to be this way, and that's what I want you to take away from this episode today. You don't have to put up with it. Whenever you start taking up sensible strength and mobility training, it really can mitigate against a whole host of common running issues. I was going to say injuries, but issues, because we've defined injuries earlier. But some of these are injuries. I'm going to read them out, and some of these are legitimate injuries that you do need treatment for. But if you do a bit of strength training, this is going to help mitigate a lot of these. So things like stress fractures, that pops up every now and then. Shin splints, that's a really common one. Low back pain, hear about it now and then. People wonder why their back's getting sore, and don't connect the dots and realise that it's some sort of some sort of displacement there. There's something happening that's causing low back pain, whether it's an imbalance in them one side from the other or whatever. Security like joint disorders, plantar fasciitis, that's a huge one today. Achilles tendonitis, hamstring tightness or hamstring tears, iliotibial band syndrome, IT band syndrome, patellofemoral pain syndrome. Like, there's so many of these that can be prevented, and I'm going to explain to you why and how strength and mobility is able to do that. First of all, there was a study done in 2009 by Hawley, and it found that explosive strength and plyometrics training has been shown to enhance elastic and reactive properties, increases the rate of force development, increased power production, and increased musculotendon stiffness. So that needs to be taken, I'm not going to say with a pinch of salt, but it needs to be put in perspective. So that is, as we get older, our elastic and reactive properties of our tissues starts to degenerate. Basically, it gets lower quality. Okay, so yes, strength and mobility can certainly help, but if you're going to get into plyometrics explosive training, you need to be careful if you're over the age of about, I'm going to say 40, 45, 50. I'll leave it to your discretion, but there's significant changes in your tissue quality there, and you could do more harm than good if you're building in strength and plyometrics. If you're building in power, so explosive movements, and plyometrics is included in that. So things like box jumps and all that sort of stuff. Once you get over a certain age and you're doing those things, you're kind of waiting for something to pop, to put it bluntly. So all of these things, if you're in 20s and 30s, by all means, I think you should probably include them. And your goal is to get faster, become a better runner, and to prevent injury. I think it's like a well thought out plyometric program, explosive strength program really can help. So it's all really, really beneficial to runners of those ages. As Agard and Anderson in 2010 concluded that heavy strength training produced improved neuromuscular communication, so rate of force production and maximal voluntary contraction. It increased tendon stiffness and increased the percentage of type 2A muscle fibers. So according to Agard and Anderson 2010, strength training, this is a direct quote, strength training can lead to enhanced long-term, so over 30 minutes, and short-term, under 15 minutes, endurance capacity both in well-trained individuals and highly trained top-level endurance athletes, especially with the use of high-volume, heavy resistance strength training protocols. So one word on that, so they're saying especially with the use of high-volume, heavy resistance strength training protocols. The problem with high volume is that, again, as we age, that gets harder. As you get stronger, high volume also gets more tough. And the recovery is the issue there. So if you are trying to include like loads and loads of volume and try and kill yourself in the gym with volume, and you're finding you're beating yourself up, you're just beating the crap out of yourself trying to do loads and loads of sets of heavy weight training, you're going to start feeling other things popping up. So the volume is one, I guess you have to take it with a pinch of salt. I'm going to use that term now. Pinch of salt with the high volume.
Now that's a lot of damage!
So what about injury prevention? Injury prevention is something that we hear a lot about these days. This thing prevents injuries, that thing prevents injuries, blah, blah, blah. It's very hard to verify. That's what I'm going to say about injury prevention. Like the actual numbers around it. I mean, it's one of those things that's very hard to quantify. It's hard to put into numbers and therefore have a stat or have a means of verifying it. So if you do strength and mobility work, it's not going to guarantee. It doesn't mean you're never going to sustain injuries. We're humans. We're not robots, and even if we were robots, we would still break down. We're humans with a lot of moving parts. We're complex of so many systems and so many things going on. So it's not going to guarantee you're never going to have injuries, but it probably, if you're injury prone, it's probably going to help you mitigate those injuries. It's probably going to stop them to some extent. You're probably not going to have the same amount of them or same severity of them. But there have been empirical studies that have shown, and as well as my experience training runners and other endurance athletes, that from anecdotal evidence from them, they've said they've noticed this issue's been solved, that issue's been solved. They've noticed a decrease in injuries and niggles and knocks. So avid runners with lots of experience, different levels of experience. Some of them are beginners, some of them have been a bit more seasoned, and there's going to be, as I said, hip, knee, ankle, even back injuries, and within 1 to 3 months their niggles pretty much disappeared and their times got faster to match that. So not only were they running pain-free largely, they were also running faster than before, which is often overlooked. Obviously the times are something that feels really important at the end of the race, but if you're able to train pain-free, that's even bigger. So because run is such a repetitive exercise, I mean, think of how many strides you take and you go for a long run, hundreds, thousands. It's going to greatly increase the possibility of direct overuse injuries as well as indirect injuries caused by muscle imbalances, tightness, and reduced range of motion. So strength and mobility work, it's going to strengthen weaker, underused muscles, and it's going to restore your full range of motion. It's going to enable your body to work in a more balanced and a synergistic way. It's a big word, isn't it? Synergistic. But if you think about it, if you're running, you're always using the same muscles, same sort of intensity all the time. There's a lot of muscles that aren't being used to the extent that they should be to support you while doing your runs. And it sounds silly, but you're going to be hammering the same muscles over and over and over again. It's about doing weight training and doing millions and millions of curls, but never doing any shoulder presses or bench press. You're going to have huge biceps. I mean, your biceps are going to be popping, but your shoulders are probably going to start getting a little bit unhealthy, and your chest and right around your upper back. So that's why it's important to have a bit of balance and not just to do the one thing over and over and over and over again and hope for the best results. Whenever it comes to mobility, Robert Griffiths, he's a chiropractor and a rehab therapist, he's also a keen running enthusiast, but he did an article in Men's Running UK website. Men's Running UK, is that still allowed? Men's Running? Isn't that sexist or something? I don't know the rules anymore. He says, high mileage, faulty gait patterns, sit-down jobs, and poorly designed training programs can all lead to a loss of mobility, with the result being tight hamstrings and hip flexors. Probably other areas as well, but he points to those two areas as being the most problematic, which are incidentally on the front and the back of your body. So your hip flexors are kind of basically how your hip flexes. So your quad at the front there, at the top, tends to be where we point out, where it's tight. So mobility work is often neglected for a lot of runners. Now they'll stretch the crap out of their quads quite happily, but it'll not fit into their schedule. They'll not plan it specifically. They'll maybe do it, throw it in if they're feeling a bit tight, but they'll not make it as part of their training, their program. But it is so necessary to help prevent injuries, and it does this by achieving a fuller range of motion. If you have a limited range of motion, if you are always doing the same range of motion from your runs, from your stride, and your gait, then you need to strengthen those weaker positions, those positions where you're not getting to as often when you are running, and it'll also even help you in your recovery from your longer runs. So mobility training, it improves the range of motion of our muscles and joints, and it can even help improve our posture. There's a lot of people, as we age, we get poor posture. As we sit at desks, we get poor posture, and that's something which can indirectly lead to injuries and further imbalances, whether you're a runner or not. If you're just happen to be a human, which you probably are if you're listening to this. I don't think I've got a big dog audience, though my dog's listening at the minute on the floor. I've asked him for his opinion. He's pretty good at running, but he doesn't really want to share his words of wisdom. Mobility training can also mitigate against aches and pains, as well as improving our total body awareness and proprioception. So how you interact with the ground, how you interact with the surroundings, with your body. So in order to stay injury-free, you need a balanced body with resilient strength. That is, again, Robert Griffiths' quote, not mine. But it makes sense, right? If you're more resilient, then you're going to be more robust and you're not going to get broken like a little flower.
Please spread the word.
So a few more quick reasons why you need to be including strength and mobility work into your training program if you're a runner. So I'm going to run through them quickly and then I'm going to delve into them a little bit deeper. But muscle efficiency, posterior chain strength, core stability, and single leg strength. So muscle efficiency, first of all. If you train for strength, it is going to make you a superior athlete. Okay, so say all other things are equal. Your height's equal, your weight's equal, your VO2 max is equal with another athlete. If you're stronger than that other athlete, that's the only difference. Guess what? You're going to win the race. You're going to be quicker than they are. And that's what it comes down to. Your muscles are going to be able to work more efficiently. You're going to be able to utilize them more efficiently if you are stronger than your competitors. It's as simple as that. It really is. So whenever you do things like power training, so strength exercises, plyo training, it's going to benefit you through greater efficiency in your running. Posterior chain strength, so that's a huge part of that. So things like deadlifts, things like hip thrusts, things like low bar back squats. Posterior chain work, it's essential for runners. So it's going to strengthen your hamstrings, your glutes, and your erector spinatus muscles. You're also going to get stronger all over. Your core is going to get so much stronger, as is your quads whenever you're doing the squats. Core stability, that's another thing that runners talk about a lot. We hear runners always, saying they need a stronger core. That's another one that goes hand in hand with that. I'm not very flexible. Now, having a strong core does not mean you're able to do 100 sit-ups unbroken. It doesn't mean you need to be able to do 1,000 sit-ups or crunches or any of those sort of things. There are very few transferable benefits when it comes to running by getting in lots and lots of crunches. I hate to burst your bubble. You might get a nice, couple of abs, maybe a perforated disc in your lower back if you're over a certain age, but they're not going to benefit you when it comes to running. Instead, you'd be better including things like stability exercises, so core stability exercises, things like dead bug, your plank and your plank variation, side planks, bird dog, the Pallof press, things like that. Things that are going to actually translate into you being a more stable runner. You're going to be able to keep your torso stable while moving your limbs. Single leg strength. This probably comes after you've built a significant amount of strength in other areas using both legs, using both arms, both legs. So get your squats up, get your deadlifts up, and then think about, right, is there an imbalance, is there a deficiency? Because you're going to have to get significantly stronger before you find out those things probably anyway. There's no wrong time to do them, I'm not saying that, but you're probably better focusing on the main thing first of all. So no matter what type of running you prefer, whether it's hill running, mountains, road running, 5Ks, 10Ks, whatever, single leg work is really important, and it's basically going to help improve your single leg hip strength, your balance, your stability, as you spend the vast bulk of your time on one leg while running. That's what it comes down to. You're spending most of your time on one leg. That's the difference between walking and running, right? You don't have 2 feet on the floor at the same time. The floor, you're not running inside. On the ground, you don't have 2 feet on the ground at the same time. So that's where single leg work comes in. It's important at some stage, but it's probably not the biggest priority. So that's why I've kind of listed it last. So let's get down to it. Why do so many runners avoid strength training? Or why do they go through the motions of strength training? They tick the box, but they don't really do strength training. They lift a few weights for a while, but they don't really do strength training. Am I right? And if you're listening to this and you are a runner, I'm not having to go at you. I'm really keen to get to the bottom of why you're avoiding doing strength training, like proper strength training. Now, based upon what I've been chatting to a lot of clients who are runners, I've chatted to people who used to be runners, and many runners, it seems, fear adding too much bulk or unnecessary muscle mass, so they tend to avoid weights. They tend to fear, don't want to do too much gym work, I'll get big and bulky. Kind of like females, kind of like women tend to, there's still that kind of attitude, don't want to get too big and bulky. And these might be seem like logical concerns, and especially for male runners, because we do tend to build muscle a little bit easier due to our levels of testosterone. That's still difficult. That needs to be pointed out. It's still really difficult. It doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't happen by accident. It takes effort. It takes effort, and it takes consistency as well. Also, it takes calories. If you're eating kind of to your level of required calories and a little bit more, you're definitely, you're going to probably put on muscle if you're training correctly. If you're in a calorie deficit, it's much, much much harder unless you're obese. In which case you probably need to address that if you're looking to get faster and you're a runner in the first place. But for every extra pound that you are carrying as a runner, it means more energy is used with every stride, right? So over a 10-kilometer race and beyond, this can have a significant impact on your performance due to the oxygen and energy requirements. But what's more important is your body fat percentage. That's something that's not talked about in this conversation. I don't want to put on too much weight. Well, what sort of weight is it? Muscle is useful weight. Muscle is useful tissue. Now, the extreme is that you will go, well, I don't want to turn into a bodybuilder. But there's a very, very big journey between you being a runner and you being a bodybuilder. It wouldn't happen overnight, and it wouldn't happen by accident. It wouldn't happen with ease. It would take a consistent, really, really intent effort to make that happen. And also, you're probably going to be trying to develop muscles. If you're a bodybuilder, you're talking about sculpting their muscles. So you're focusing on things like your medial deltoid. You're talking about things like your posterior deltoid, and you're trying to carve those. You're talking about your pec major and your pec minor. You're talking about muscles, like trying to segregate them and doing little tiny exercises, isolation exercises to try and develop those muscle tissues to get them bigger, so that you can create the desired physique, something that's aesthetic. When it comes, that's not what strength training is, and that's what people get mixed up so often. They think that strength training and bodybuilding are the same thing, and they're really, really not. One is very concerned with just developing as much muscle tissue as possible. The other is just concerned about getting strong. So if you're a runner, you should be more concerned about getting strong and not worry about accidentally becoming a bodybuilder overnight. So the body fat percentage is something that it needs to be talked about. If you're a runner and you don't have very much muscle tissue and you look fairly lean, I've seen it before. I've seen it quite often. A lot of times runners think they are in good shape, or they think they're really lean, and whenever they get the old body fat percentage test done or get the calipers on, and they're shocked. They're shocked because their body fat percentage is much higher than they thought it was. And the reason for this is because there's such a lack of muscle tissue. It makes the fat tissue percentage higher than you would realize. Now, it doesn't make sense until you try it, until you see it, and I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen the shock on people's faces whenever they see that. But if you build muscle, if you develop a bit of muscle, that's useful tissue. It's like we said above, it's going to make you're going to have more muscle efficiency by developing the strength. So men generally will kind of aim for between anything from, anything healthy, I guess, 10 to 15% body fat, and then women should be looking at something like 15 to 20%. Again, these are rough figures. Everybody's different. Everybody's going to be somewhere slightly different in that scale, especially when it comes to age. But it should be pointed out that it's very, very difficult to achieve these levels of body fat if your muscle tissue is too low. So it's just like we said, runners are shocked when they get a caliper test or get a body fat percentage test because they can't believe how high their body fat percentage is, and it's because they don't have enough muscle on the skeleton. As your muscle mass percentage increases, your body fat percentage inherently goes down, and that's something that a lot of new trainees just can't get their head around. Now, something that I guess more advanced runners might consider is mitochondrial dilution. So this is something that runners fear when it comes to strength training. But if you have a really sensibly designed training program, this should not be a real reason to stop you from training for strength. Basically, as your muscle fibers increase in size with a hypertrophy resistance training program, the cells inside do not increase at the same rate like the mitochondria. This means that there are going to be fewer mitochondria per unit area, which can become a problem as less energy is then produced to power the larger muscles, which results in the muscle becoming fatigued faster. So that's what mitochondrial dilution is, just to give you a little bit of a backstory on that. However, it is possible, and this needs to be said, because yes, you can do that. You can grow muscle really, really quickly. Again, probably eating quite a lot of calories, certainly in excess of what you require, but it's still possible to execute a resistance training program, a strength training program, and avoid putting on lots of extra weight or lots of extra muscle mass while still obtaining all the benefits from that strength. It really is a matter of choosing the correct training method, your training frequency, the number of sets, reps, weight used, time under tension, exercise selection, your tempo, your rest times, all these sorts of variables and lots more as well. They will change as well over time according to your goal and where you're at currently. But a powerlifter and a bodybuilder have different goals, so they train in a very different way. A powerlifter will never really exceed 5 reps. A bodybuilder will go up to 20 reps sometimes. So that needs to be considered. It's like, 100 meter sprinter and a half marathon runner have different goals, so they train in a different way. But weight training is going to benefit both of them. So what is a runner to do? Basically, if you're a runner and you're actively avoiding strength training entirely, like you're not doing it at all, you're basically running on borrowed time. I don't mean that as like a gang style threat, like from the hood, but it quite literally is an injury waiting to happen. There's an injury waiting around the corner. I don't know, everybody can get injured. Everybody does get injured. No matter what you do, there's always a chance you can get injured, right? But if you enjoy running and you want to keep running, you need to be performing some sort of a sensible strength training program to make you as bulletproof as possible, to make you as resilient as possible, robust. And yeah, that's basically it. Not just from a performance perspective, but from a pain-free standpoint, from being able to train and run and do what you enjoy pain-free. It's like doing warm-up sets. I hate doing warm-up sets, but they're necessary. Why? Because they stop you getting injured when you're doing the work sets. Because they help make you better doing the work sets. It's just the way life is, right? Got to brush your teeth. Does anybody actually enjoy brushing their teeth? No, of course not. Maybe dentists, I don't know. But who enjoys brushing their teeth? You just have to do it, right? You have to do it so you don't get your teeth rotted out of your head and then you're running about with just gums and you're trying like this. This is how someone with just gum sounds. Hopefully that translates across via audio. There's vast multitude of exercises to choose from that will benefit you as a runner in a unique way. Now, I'm going to give you a couple here. I'm going to give you a few that really are impossible to ignore, that are going to make the best use of your time. They're most efficient use of your time, because I get it. You don't want to spend all of your week running, you don't want to spend all of your week lifting. You want to get out there and do running, which is your main thing, right? So I would train these few exercises and do them often. Do them like 2 times a week, even 3 times a week, ideally. Maybe in your off season, and then in your on season, maybe drop it down to once or twice. You know yourself, you know how it feels, but there's variations as well. I'm going to give you the basic ones, and you can tweak them as you wish. But your running performances will also thank you. Not to mention your joints, ligaments, tendons, bones, muscles. Remember, the goal is not to increase muscle mass or hypertrophy. It's a technical term. But rather it's to increase your stability, your strength, your stamina, your muscle endurance, and your resilience. And how strength training fits into that. It contributes towards all of those things. And these exercises, they might look familiar, but the devil really is in the details. The number of reps, number of sets, tempo, rest period, the frequency of the training, these will all determine how your body responds to them, and then the benefits you actually derive from them. So the first exercise I'm going to recommend is the deadlift, the standard deadlift. You can look into all the variations of it, but I'm going to recommend the standard deadlift, double overhand grip. It's called the king of lifts, and the reason it's called the king of lifts is because it activates more muscle than any other single lift. It's a pretty impressive claim. But it really is a must-do exercise for everybody, I would say, but especially for runners or endurance athletes. It's going to work your posterior chain, so your hamstrings, your glutes, your rectus spinae muscles, upper backs, your lats, biceps as well, and your arms. It's going to work so many muscles, and everything has to tighten and get tensed to make you do it effectively and safely. Don't know how well this is going to translate, but this is basically how you do it. As with most exercises, it's best to pay attention to the technique before you load up too heavy. You need a little bit of weight in the bar just so you know that you can feel the need for the technique. Otherwise you can get away with sloppy form and never feel like, why do I need to do it this way? Because you can get away with it with a lightweight poorly. So aside from the typical, deadlifting cues, make sure you pay attention to the engagement of your hamstrings before you lift the weight from the ground. So get the hips tight as well as the core. Ensure your hip hinge is in good working order before you attempt heavy lifts. So see how you're feeling. Just do it with an empty bar. Hinge, push the hips back. You've got a door behind you and you're trying to close the door with your bum. Keep your core tight. Keep your back straight. All of those things. They say neutral spine, but that is different for everybody, and it's hard to kind of convey what that means across audio. But make sure your core is braced. So breathe. Take a big breath in and push out. So you're trying to make your belly as big as possible. Protect that lumbar region. Protect that unsupported region of your spine. And yeah, make sure you've got that tension on before you engage the lift. So make sure you maintain strict rigid form throughout the lowering as well as the lifting of the bar each and every time. Don't drop it to the floor, don't bounce it, and don't grip and rip. It's like a phrase that weightlifters use. If you're a runner and you don't know what that means, but you're basically grab hold of it and try and yank it off the floor. Make sure you're tight and it's more of a push. Think of your feet pushing into the ground to lift the bar off the floor. Not only is this a really good exercise for your lower body, but it also is really, really good for your upper back and your shoulders and your posture in general. So I would say do one, work out your way up to one heavy set. If you're only starting off and it's light, maybe you can do 3 sets, and do no more than kind of 5 reps. That should be enough. From there, just increase the weight. It's as simple as that. 2.5 kilos or 2 kilos every single session. Just keep adding it, and you'll get stronger. Simple as that. As long as you're allowing enough time recovery. Don't do it every day. Leave a bit of space in between. Next one I'm going to recommend is the back squat, and preferably a low bar back squat. Now I know I was going to keep it just the standard exercises, but the low bar back squat is the way that you can develop the most strength, bar none, when it comes to squatting. Of all the squat variations, goblet squatting, front squatting, high bar squat, back squatting, overhead squatting, all those, zerker squatting, all those sort of things, this is the way you could develop the most strength for 99.9% of the population. So where do you do it? You set the bar on your posterior deltoid, so the back part of your shoulder. Don't set it on your trap, set it down a little bit lower on your posterior deltoid, across the spine of your scapula basically, so top of the shoulder blades, somewhere in around there. There's like a little shelf, whenever you pull your elbows back, that's where the bar sits. And the difference is going to be, what you want to do is you want to make sure the bar path stays over your center foot the whole time. So what it does, it allows you to give a little bit more of a lean as you descend in the squat, and it allows you to use your hips to lift the weight rather than just your quads. It's not just your quads and hamstrings, you get your glutes, you get all your hip muscles involved in it, and your core works nice and hard as well to shift the weight. But essentially your chest is going to lean forward a little bit more than a typical squat. As long as your spine stays straight, your core stays tight, there's absolutely no problem there. The weight, because it's further down your back, it's going to put less pressure in your lumbar. The higher it is up your back, the more pressure there is going to be on your back. So a lot of people can lift between 20 and 30% extra a low bar squat than a high bar squat, and that's not even an exaggeration. That is verifiable. You can look it up, but try it for yourself, see what you can do. If you've never tried it before, it'll feel weird, so you might not be able to lift as much the first time you try it, but train both and see how you get on. But yeah, make sure your core is tight. Keep your knees out. You want your feet about 15 to 30 degree angle, your toes out, and you want to have your heels about hip width or shoulder width apart, somewhere in around there. Keep the knees pointing wherever your feet are pointing, and yeah, descend. Make sure your hips get below parallel before adding extra weight to the bar each time. Make sure that you're not just going through the motions and getting, doing half-assed reps and you're finishing the rep high and then going to the next rep. And again, 3 sets of 5, work your way up to it, 3 heavy sets, and make sure you rest plenty in between. So the goal whenever you're doing all of these exercises that we're going to talk about is to get stronger. It's not to, right, let's go in, I'm out of breath, let's go in after a minute or 2 minutes and try and do it again. That's not going to get you stronger, and it's not going to give us the desired effect of what you want to get from these exercises if you're trying to contribute towards your running. So Give yourself plenty of rest, 3, 4, 5. So whenever you get really strong, you'll probably be taking like 10 or 15 or 20 minutes between sets. It's just whatever you need to recover necessary to hit the next weight at the same intensity and get all 5 reps. If you don't get 5 reps and you're feeling 4 and you dump it, don't go up higher the next time. Again, same thing as the deadlift. You want to make sure that you're putting on about 2 kilos or 2.5 kilos per session, nice and consistently. Be patient with it. Don't throw on just because you could do more weight doesn't always mean you should do more weight. The reasons being it'll maybe make you a little bit sore. It'll maybe be harder to recover, and then maybe take an extra day before you go back to the gym again, or you'll maybe have to skip a run or two. So you don't want that. You want to make sure you're recovering and you're going up incrementally. You're not just throwing 5 or 10 kilos on the bar. And that's the other thing is track your workouts, track your weights. Don't just guess. Try and track them, okay? So low bar back squat, I'm recommending that one. There's other variations. Once you master that and you're strong, that's the point, is to get stronger. It's not to try and isolate this muscle or isolate that muscle. It's to get overall stronger, and that's the way you're going to do it. Whenever you go into that bar, the type of stimulus and the stress that you put yourself under, it's going to have a really positive effect on getting you stronger overall. So your core has to get stronger, your legs, hips, all the big muscles have to get stronger. Shoulder is going to have to get into good positioning, so your posture is going to improve with that one as well. So those are the main leg, they're full body I guess, but they're leg exercises that you want to include. I would definitely prioritize those, and if you want to add in upper body ones, which I would recommend as well, you want to get strong overall. You just don't want to get big strong legs, you want to have a strong torso and upper body as well, in your arms. So I would recommend throwing in some chin-ups or pull-ups. Don't know if you can hear that in the background. That's my dog. He's got a wee bit of a cough at the minute. It's going around, isn't it? The old cough, coughing and chest infections and all that. But yeah, bench press. I would recommend overhead press as opposed to bench press, merely because it is overall a better exercise if you're just looking to get strong. So your overhead press, if you think of the chain, like the kinetic chain that you're going to work right from the tops of your hands when you have it hoisted overhead, right to the soles of your feet. All of the muscles in between that are doing something. They've all got some sort of role to play in making that happen. So how you do it, take the bar to the rack at about the same height as you would do a back squat. Dip underneath it and straighten your forearms up. So you want your forearms straight when you're at chin height. You don't want it any lower than chin height. And what you want to achieve at that position is vertical forearms. If you drop the bar too low, you lose that position of the forearms. So really you're not doing the exercise, you're doing an exercise before the exercise, which is not what we want to do. Squeeze your glutes, push your hips forward, lean back, keep your back straight, keep your core tight, and drive it up overhead. What you want to do in this with the overhead press is you want to make sure that the bar is staying mid-foot. Okay, if it deviates, if it moves onto your toes or it moves onto your heels, it's going to mean the bar either isn't going to come up or it's going to come crashing down. Most of the time it's not going to go up. It's going to stop going up, and it's going to be much of a struggle. And it is quite a fickle exercise. Some days you're going to get it right and it's going to go well. Other days you're going to be off by a centimetre and it's not going to go anywhere, and you're going to get really frustrated. But you won't go up as quickly in this one with the weight. Each session, if you're adding a kilo or half a kilo, that's probably going to be enough. And again, 3 sets, 5 reps is going to be enough to build you strength. It's going to be the most effective way to build you strength. Don't push out of your knees, your hips. You want to make sure that you're strict pressing from the shoulders, that you're doing it as strictly as possible, and you're not dipping the knees. You're not going to be dip and drive. It's a strict press. It's not a push press or a push jerk. So yeah, your shoulders are going to get stronger, and if you've got strong, healthy shoulders, that's going to help you with your running whenever you're using your arms when you're running. And then pull-ups or chin-ups, whatever way you want to do them. Double overhand grip or double underhand grip, whatever way you want to do it. I would highly recommend those as well if you're a runner. Why do you need upper body strength if you're a runner? Well, if you think about it, so the longest muscle in your body is your lats. Your latimus dorsus, okay, down the side of your body, kind of like wings, okay, they stick out there, and they are really important for your posture overall. They're important for healthy functioning shoulders, and pull-ups or chin-ups are going to help strengthen that. They're going to help strengthen, again, your posture. As you fatigue and tire and you go for long runs, guess what? Your shoulders start slumping, your head starts going down, and everything starts giving out, your midline included. Whenever you train to do pull-ups or chin-ups correctly and you're hollowing out your body, that's a really good way to develop core strength and core stability. It's a core stability exercise, and it's far superior than doing crunches and sit-ups and all those things. So whenever you do it properly, you've got your feet slightly out in front of you and you hollow out your torso in your middle, then you're going to really develop those core muscles at the front that's going to help keep you stable. And then the biceps. Biceps are obviously the one that people think of when they do chin-ups or pull-ups. They're going to get strong as well. That's going to help you again with your keeping your arms strong as you run, so they don't fatigue as easily. But just in general, you're going to be more resilient overall. It's a really good core exercise aside from the arms and shoulders that you're going to arms and shoulder strength you're going to develop out of it. So those are the 3 or 4 exercises I would recommend that you start including in your program. And if you are a runner and you want to build a resilient, tougher body that's going to perform better and is going to be more pain-free, allowing you to train at a higher intensity and get faster. But there's other exercises as well. It doesn't mean you have to only do those or these are the only ones you should do. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you want to make the best use of your time, and I'm saying that these are how you're going to do that. If you wanted to include it, say you're in your off season, you're going to try and drop running down to once or twice a week and you're wanting to do a little bit more, maybe you could start doing things like reverse lunges, forward lunges, high step ups, things like front squats if you wanted to play about with those, hip thrusts, hip bridges, sumo deadlifts. There's all sorts of variations you can do. Zerker carries, zerker squats. There's so many other exercises that you can include, but my goal today is just to give you 3 or 4 exercises, simple exercises that you can master and get stronger at. The goal is not to include as many exercises as possible. That's not going to make you stronger. If anything, you're probably going to be overtrained and under-rested, under-recovered, and you're going to pull up from your progress much quicker. So that's why I would recommend that you include just 3 or 4, keep it simple, rest lots in between each set, and nail them. Just keep going up the weights and see what happens. And if your running performance goes down, obviously don't do this before you go for a competition run or something. Don't be coming back to me and saying, Stuart, I did your training program, I did that what you said I should do, and I got slower time than last time. Don't be doing that, right? If you're doing it the night before, that's a mistake. If you're doing it even 2 days before, it's probably going to be a mistake. You want to make sure if you've got a race coming up, you taper it off. You want to peak, but you want to leave yourself a good few days rest before the competition or before your race. So you're going to perform well, you're well recovered, and you're fresh. Okay? Right, it's Joke of the Week time, and this week's one is specially themed for Halloween. Are you ready? What do ghosts serve for dessert? Ice cream. Get it? Ice cream. Yeah? No? Okay.
Oh, no.
And that's the end of another show. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully this has helped you if you are a runner, and I would challenge you to put all those things into practice or put them to the test and see if what I'm telling you is correct or not. I would love to hear some feedback on any runners out there who implement the things that I've suggested, or if you have any feedback, if you have any suggestions, if you need any more help, do drop me a comment, drop me an email, and I would love to delve into it deeper. If you want me to delve into a specific area a little bit deeper, I would love to help you out. Have a great weekend, and if you have any suggestions yet for future shows, or you have any jokes for me, do drop them in. Have a great weekend, and yeah, happy October. I shall see you on the other side in November. And don't forget to train today so you can be stronger tomorrow.